Hello and welcome to this latest edition of Weather or Not. I'm Meteorologist Brian Karstens. Thanks for watching today on this Friday. Everybody ready for the weekend? I know the weather forecast is definitely going to shake things up a little bit. We are talking about a cool down and a real taste of fall weather. So, of course, that's going to be a big topic of conversation on today's program. Well, a couple of things I'd like to get to here as we watch the weather here today. And obviously, if you've got questions or comments, you can always feel free to send an email to either Scott or myself. Scott is gone today, but we love to hear from our viewers and, all the things that are happening and just questions in general. So that's why we run that crawl once in a while, just to give you a friendly reminder about that. Well, here's a look, an upfront forecast. I know as we're watching the weather this afternoon, it's been kind of a busy day. We've had a collection of showers and thunderstorms across parts of the region. The general idea is for these thunderstorms to continue to push to the south and to the southeast. So that's how we're going to finish up our day today. Keep in mind that new development across portions of northwestern Iowa, southwest Minnesota can be a bit stronger at times. There's a hint of that as we head through the afternoon. Obviously, for real-time and late-breaking weather information, make sure you're watching KELOLAND TV or, of course, watching our latest coverage with our digital products as well. Now, the bottom line on the forecast tonight is that we're clearing. We're getting cooler, so we still have a chance of a couple thunderstorms in western South Dakota, but we do expect that this less humid weather. Yeah, I know we've been promising that. Well, it's moving in as we continue to progress through the overnight, and it's really kicking off and setting the tone for the weekend forecast. Obviously here too, a little bit of a northwest breeze to go along with that. That's another parameter we're going to be examining here on our Weather or Not program today, because it is a big deal getting into a northwest flow and opening the floodgates to a lot of Canadian air. It's interesting, too, to pick apart the details of the forecast. Tomorrow, you can actually see just a little bit of a hint of some of that, at least across Minnesota, little speckles there, little green freckles on the radar. That's a little signal of some instability there just because of the fact it's so cool aloft, and it does develop that. But a lot of that fizzles tomorrow night. Did I mention the overnight lows again? This is going to be a big topic of conversation. Those numbers in the 40s and low 50s, feeling pretty comfortable for this time of the year. So I think that sounds like a great way to start off the weekend. And if you like a taste of fall, we've got more of that coming up for early next week. We're going to talk about those maps and get you set up for the rest of your weather, so stay with us. Welcome back to Weather or Not. I'm meteorologist Brian Karstens. Well, we do want to cover the topic of severe weather the past 24 hours. We've had a few storms around. Some of those more intense in some spots than others. Take a look at this video. This was sent in from near Rossholt, South Dakota. And yet again, another tornado. And a couple of them, actually. This is a short video clip here. And this is right near Interstate 29 on the North Dakota-South Dakota border. And a classic stovepipe tornado. That's how I would categorize this. Let's look at it one more time. And you can see the edge of the cumulus cloud right there. And then there's the base of that storm. And what a summer. It has just been one after another in this northeastern part of South Dakota. I have to say, when things are said and done by the end of the summer, tornado counts, severe weather in general has been pretty intense. So again, that's a look at the northeast there. Now, that storm actually ended up moving down toward Millbank, and then pieces of that also ended up kind of back building toward Watertown. So we had some heavy rain. Got to mention that too. And then storms also flared up around Huron, and that's another focal point in this conversation here about big storms. You can actually, if you look really carefully, and I'll actually zoom in for you on this, but Beadle County has been the epicenter. Take a look at that. Doppler radar estimates of 5 to 6 inches of rain, kind of a narrow corridor that runs through the northern part of Beetle County, but we had flash flood warnings in effect for a time on that. And obviously, we've had a summer where heavy rain has accumulated in some of these local regions. So just a little overarching view here of the weather conditions. And again, that's the weather map as of about mid-morning here, about the 9 o'clock hour. We've been adding rain to the last 24 hours, and I expect that obviously we'll continue to do that here throughout the remainder of the day, although not everybody catching that moisture. It does look quieter as we get into this cooler weather pattern ahead. That's going to be our next topic of conversation, so stay with us. Welcome back to Weather or Not. I'm meteorologist Brian Karstens. Well, let's dig into some details of the upcoming forecast. And as we set the framework for that, remember yesterday and how hot it was again in central South Dakota. 99 degrees was our high temperature in Pierre. We hit 102 in Phillip, 100 degrees in Pine Ridge. So definitely we've had the hot weather around. There's no question about that. And of course, storms yesterday. A couple of interesting side notes to the storm reports that we've had. We had the tornado reports around Rosshold in the far northeast. I'll try to share a couple of pictures of that yet on the program today. We ended up with some baseball-sized hail overnight just near and south of Howard, South Dakota. So that is no fun either. And then just kind of a general collection of showers and thunderstorms across our region. This is all ahead of this cold front that continues to march eastward. So again, just setting the tone for what's ahead. The rainfall tallies. Now, of course, this map is always a little behind. It's accumulating the rainfall up through yesterday, and this is a 30-day precipitation average. And so you can see numbers here, 100, 200, almost 300% of normal moisture when you look at Watertown and some of those areas in the dark blue. And that's very hyper-localized to showing you exactly where we've had the wettest conditions. We are still running some deficits in a few spots, but there's definitely a lot more blue and green on that map compared to the other colors. So that's important, too, as we weigh in the effects on the drought monitor updates and all the factors going into that. I will mention that as we progress into our forecast, we are not looking at as much of the, at least in terms of the overall moisture supply here. It is going to be less humid. That's been promised. I know. We're kind of watching that trend there. There's a look at the dew point map. So yet this afternoon, those 60s still holding on this afternoon in the southeast. But look at what is coming our direction for the weekend. Dew points in the 40s and low 50s. This feels like fall when we get into an air mass like this. No question about that. And again, that is the overall trend here in the forecast. Now, that's Saturday, okay? Let's see what goes on into Sunday. Well, there we go. That's Sunday afternoon. Dew points as low as 40 in Rapid City. Yep, that's definitely Canadian air, cool and dry. And these numbers, they're going to stay low all the way through Monday. So this is also one of the recipe ingredients for the cooler temperatures at night. Because remember, dew point gives us a theoretical bottom. Okay, so think about the number you see on the screen when you see, like, for example, in Aberdeen at 45. Now, during the daytime, obviously, we're not going to be hitting our lows for the day. That's going to be the opposite. We're going to get the peak heating of the day. But as we see those temperatures cooling during the overnight period, like we're going to see next here, watch what happens. Okay, this is a pause point into Tuesday, and those dew points are still in the 40s. So that's why we're going our overnight lows close to these numbers. We think it's possible to radiate out and basically have a situation where the dew point and the temperature meet together. When that happens, the humidity, by the way, is 100%. Now, that can lead to fog development. I would imagine that that will be somewhat of a conversation here. We've got enough water in the topsoil to support that. So just a little heads up there. And then, of course, you got to write it down because Scott Mundt will write it down, and he'll share with us what that means for 90 days from now. But again, that's for early next week. And did I mention, too, that the winds are pretty light after we swing the cold front through this weekend? So when you get high pressure overhead, too, that's a classic setup here for some just nice-feeling weather, refreshingly cool, maybe a little chilly for some of you. I can acknowledge that. Okay, let's bring the view out just a little bit here. This is an interesting map, too, showing tropical moisture. So what we have dealt with for many segments the last few weeks is basically these plumes of moisture that have been pretty thick across our region. But now as we turn the corner and we're looking at this northwest flow pattern, we are taking that moisture and it is sliding to the south and southeast. And clearly you can see the red colors, the purple colors, that's where your real depth of tropical moisture is in the atmosphere. And see, now that we've switched up the jet stream patterns, our flow of weather is all connected from things coming up from the northwest. So we can't get any real deep moisture here until that changes. Now, can that happen by late in the period? This is looking out about a week out from now. And it shows maybe a little bit of a modest recovery there to some of that moisture. But we're not looking at super deep moisture. And this takes us all the way into early September. So let's see what happens. But that's an interesting weather map there as we head into Labor Day weekend already, just around the corner. All right. Well, with that said, we've got more weather topics to cover. Stay with us. You're watching Whether or Not, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Whether or Not. I'm meteorologist Brian Karstens. So as we talk about the extended forecast and kind of looking out there beyond the cool down, of course, we got to take that into consideration. So here's the setup as we, end the month of August, as that seems hard to say and believe, but it is true. Low pressure north of Lake Superior. You see that big counterclockwise circulation up there north of Minnesota. So that is the main culprit behind the cool weather. And I'll say maybe that's a good thing. I think some of us are ready for it. So as we go through time, let's click on the maps here. We'll see the movement of these weather features as we progress into early next week. Now, as we take this full screen again, I want to show you how, again, we're kind of sitting in this split middle between the high to our southwest and the low to our northeast. And so that funnels a northwesterly pattern right through our region. And it tends to keep us obviously below normal, no question about that, but also a fairly dry start to early next week. So that's a big consideration point here too. Now, people are wondering about Labor Day weekend already. Well, that's a good question to ask. So what do we see here? Well, the middle part of the week looks a little bit warmer. The end of our 7-day forecast is trying to show some of that returning influence of that ridge of high pressure. And so that's accounted for in the 7-day forecast. That means some 80s are going to come back. It does not necessarily mean that the stifling humidity is all coming back. We're not necessarily at that point in the forecast, but we are talking about some moderating temperatures for sure. That's a big part of the outlook. And then as you watch into the weekend, this is a little bit interesting because the modeling now is showing a cutoff low or a low pressure center developing across our region. And if that takes place, a couple things are going to happen. Okay. Number one, Scott Mundt is going to be correct about his theory on, holidays during the summer. Seems like we do get chances of rain quite a bit of the time, and that would likely be an instigator behind that. And if it happens to follow this trend line right into Labor Day, of course, it would give us the conjunction of two things, the cooler temperatures and some rain chances. But again, that's just a first look at that pattern. Let's take a look, though, at this. This is our temperature anomaly map. So what we can do here, and I think that this is very telling, when you see blue and green, that's representing below average temperatures. So this gets us into Sunday and Monday. And you can see right in the northern plains, there we are. We're right in the middle of our forecast of what we've been talking about. And the deficits from normal, isn't that impressive? going into Monday morning. If you look at the legend here on the bottom of the screen, I know that's kind of hard to read, but those are temperatures that are 15 to almost 17 degrees below normal. I mean, you're talking some pretty decent deficits there. And then, of course, that continues Tuesday. We get into Wednesday of next week. Well, now we're kind of splitting the maps a little bit because you can see the warmth draped over the top. Temperatures in southern Canada are going to rebound above average for this time of the year. And so I do think that is going to have some implications on our weather as well. Although the cool signal in the midsection of the country does not entirely disappear. Even though you've got all this heat up in Canada, the midsection like Kansas and parts of Missouri and Oklahoma remaining below average in that forecast. Now, I do want to take you out into the weekend. See this? It actually picks up on some of those deficits across Nebraska, Missouri, Kansas. That's because the modeling is trying to develop that cutoff low, or at least there's some more support to that. So that would be the wild card for the weekend, and that takes us into early September. And I do think it's striking when these cooler air masses are not in a hurry to leave. And in fact, look at that. That's just after Labor Day. Another shot of some cooler weather could be lurking. So let's keep track of these. Let's see what happens into that first week of September. If that pattern holds out and really tries to hold a pretty firm grip on things, then we will end up being below average again. And so for some of you watching, that's just fine. I know. I kind of have to admit I'm a little partial to that too. I'm not a huge fan of prolonged excessive heat and humidity. I love a taste of summer. There's always the humidity that is good for a lot of reasons, but also a break is kind of nice too. So maybe you're in that camp, maybe not. But at any rate, the weather, we can't control it. But we will take some 70s. Of course, as we are continuing to work on your forecast here for the weekend. Make sure you use our digital products online, KELOLAND.com. And of course, weather on demand here on KELOLAND Plus and our regular broadcasts on television as well. Okay, well, that'll do it today for our latest edition of Whether or Not. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, we will be back here on the air on Mondays. So Scott is set to return as well. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful weekend.